The tech landscape has changed dramatically over the past decade. We have seen huge cultural shifts from the way our data is used to how we consume television and music. As we round out the corner to go towards 2020, we are taking a look at the biggest tech stories from the last 10 years. So to help us go through all of this and take a walk down the digital memory lane, we've invited Likan Olaway. He's the founder and CEO of the Black Professionals Tech Network, and you join us in studio once again. Welcome, Likan.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about it. Decade's a long time, and a lot has changed in the last 10 years. So let's talk about the thing that all of us, myself included, are so obsessed with, our social media. What have been the big changes you've seen there? What are the go-to platforms? What's the big standout stories for you?
Well, the last 10 years has been significant in terms of social media, right? As you can see, a lot of people came on the market early on, right? There was also consolidation that happened later on, right? So in the beginning of the decade, we had Facebook went over 1 billion users, which is significant, right? Right behind it, in early part of the decade was also Instagram, right? And Facebook then bought Instagram. So Facebook became a major player. Or later on in the decade, Facebook then bought WhatsApp, right? So as we moved through the decade, you saw, more consolidation happening, right? LinkedIn was purchased, right? But then TikTok moved into the market later on, right? So we just saw a lot more people into social media, a lot more people using social media. But then as we were using social media, something really interesting began to happen. Data. Right?
Okay. Data
became the new currency, right? Actually, because now with, us going from 4G to 5G, right? Or from 3G to 4G, from 4G to 5G, which is 100 times faster than 4G, right? We're seeing much more data being sort of used, right? To impact marketing, impact consumers, impact the way we do business, impact the way we do work, right? So that became something really, really significant also that you're seeing our big tech companies actually having to look at much more than they did before then.
Okay, so let's talk about as these companies got bigger and bigger, when you talk about Google, Amazon, Facebook, they're growing at this rapid speed and they need to be monitored and governments need to step in. So we're seeing how regulators are attempting to catch up, trying to make sure fake news doesn't get online and political propaganda doesn't manipulate people on these very powerful platforms. What are some of the biggest concerns that you've been looking at?
I mean, the really interesting thing is this: as these companies are hitting scale, right, and are growing really rapidly, government and businesses, the companies themselves, are trying to figure out the kinks of scale. And what does that mean? And I'll tell you, something that's been really interesting. There's been, data breaches that we've seen throughout. In tech companies and most companies, one of the biggest departments now is their data security teams, right? So you're seeing more and more companies looking at data as a really important thing. Let me tell you some really key data points. Now, as people are looking at how do I effectively use social media? How do I effectively, do business, right? And companies are also saying, how do I do business without actually putting myself at risk, putting my organizational reputation at risk? And they're still trying to figure it out. Government, especially in Toronto, you see how we're dealing with Uber, how we're dealing with Airbnbs. Right. We're still trying to understand how is it that we actually, deal with privacy, deal with security. And these companies are saying, how do we, when we're hacked? So, for example, when Amazon technology is hacked and a baby is being spoken to by someone in another country, right? They don't know how to deal with that yet, right? They're still trying to figure it out. When, we all know what happened with Facebook and, the engagement that happened in the US through the elections, right? We're still trying to understand what the 2020s is going to look like based on, the pace of change, the pace of technology, the pace of data and how it's being used, and what 5G will bring. That's a whole different thing that we need to begin thinking about, both from a policy arm, right, and of course from a scale arm in the companies.